It's a pleasure for me to introduce Professor Gu, who is going to be speaking on demographic transition in China. He is has adjunct professor at Peking University, East China Normal University, Fuzhou University, and Kunming Medical College. There's lots of other things. He's very active in demographic population studies. He's done numerous research projects in China, engaged in extensive field work using both quantitative and qualitative approaches. He's written and published extensively in both English and Chinese about population, family planning, population dynamics and urbanization, fertility trends, sex ratios, quality of care, and women's status in China. His talk today, I think, will be it's certainly of great interest to me, and I hope it'll be of great interest to all of you. It's all yours. I'm going to turn this.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. All right.
Thanks, Professor Garfinkel. Before I talk, I want to say I want to thank Professor Garfinkel for his talk in Beijing last December, which was so impressive. He talked about how we see the linkage between the welfare and the nation's economic development. Thank you very much. Also, I'm very honored to come to Columbia today to discuss with you about the China population issues. And when we talk about population in China, what very naturally come to your mind? What did I do something? Okay. Yeah, very naturally, you will think about this is a country with many people, which in fact still is the largest population in the world so far, and people tend to have many children. So, family is big, and fertility is high, and as a result, population grows rapidly. And a lot of young people, and most people living in rural areas. That's usually people will think about China population, but suddenly you will find this kind of profile are no longer valid. China has been changing so much demography that you now, on average, family with less than 2 children. And population become aging and aging. More and more older people in population. And another issue is the imbalance in sex ratio. First at the time of birth and later on in the population structure as well. And there's a massive, tremendous migration in China, as you heard about. That's we never see that in China's history, at least probably in the world history as well. And soon, China will no longer be the number 1 in terms of the population size. India will go the number 1. China will become number 2. So a lot of the changes. I want to go through these demographic transformation with you in today's talk. We had the most recent census conducted in 2010. Result has released. In terms of population size, are still growing. Now it's 1.34 billion. It's about that. But on the other hand, you look at the pace of the growth. It's reduced dramatically. If in 30 years ago, the inter-census annual growth rate on average 2%. Now it's only 0.57%, which means in 30 years it reduced by to the 1/3 of what was 30 years ago. And on the other hand, population become urban. The 2010 census report is 49%, but recently more than 50% already. Now, if we look at more closely what happened in the last 10 years or so, since 2000, if we look at the population size is still growing, as we said, but if you look at the number of births annually, it reduced from about 18 million to 70 million to 60 million. On the other hand, when population become age, the number of deaths increased as well. So as a result, in terms of the annual growth of the population has been reducing. And it was officially claimed by the time of 2000, China will see annual growth by 10 million in the first decade of the 21st century. Now, the first decade of the 21st century has passed. Did we see that? No, we didn't see that. Rather, what we saw is the annual growth from less than 10 million to 8 million to 7 million to 6 million, all the way down. In 10 years, China's annual growth of the population reduced by 1/3. That's a lot reduction. If we look over from 1949, by the time of the People's Republic found to now, if we ignore, I should not ignore, but for the time being, ignore the 3 year of famine around the 1960. Of course, this is another issue. When we have time, we can discuss more. But we just pretend that this is not there. So if we will look at the trajectory, you see at the beginning was mortality decline first, but the birth rate remained high. That's why population become growing rapidly, and later on mortality then stabilized more or less at the low level, and birth rate start to follow. Then growth reduced as well. So this is, as we see in other populations in the world, it's the same pattern. China followed the same transition as well. In terms of the number of births, in the late 1970s, 80s, it was 25 million annually. Now, 30 years later, now reduced to 60 million. Also, the birth rate reduced as well. Now we can look at the age structure of the population. Of course, now people talk a lot about the aging issues, but getting bigger in terms of proportion of the 60 and the 65 above. But relatively speaking, still, in terms of proportion, still low in China. Of course, it's not the whole story. I will talk about it more later. The most obvious part is still the population in 15 to 59, which we basically call the labor force population. But what I want to draw your attention is the green part, the population from 0 to 14. After the revolution, it was about at the 40% of the population. But by the 82, it reduced to 1/3, then 1/4, 1/5, 1/6, reduced all the way down. If you look at the population in a dynamic process, you will find that this red part will later on move to aging. And the green part will move in as a labor force. That will be China's problem. So we can put together as a pyramid to show the structure. That's the big part of the population, but today, in years, they will move to age, retire age, and will be supported by the shrink the bottom population. All this has a lot to do with the fertility reduction. As National Bureau of Statistics conduct the annual survey and publish the results every year in its own yearbook by age and by parity. So it's very easy for demographers to calculate what will be the total fertility rate of the year. If you look at over the decade, the TFR has been quite stable at the level 1.4 around, which is much lower than replacement. Of course, if you look at the age specific, you see that it's moved downward. The people tend to have babies in later years. There's a tempo effect that demographers tend to talk about. For 45 to 49, it was very trivial, but now it gets to for every 1,000 women at the 45, 49, 7 have babies. So it's quite a big change. People tend to have babies in their late stage of life. And if we look at the trend over time, as I said, that we ignore the unusual period of famine. You see in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, basically China has the fertility on average 6 children per woman, and reduced dramatically in the 1970s, which is before the one-child policy, as marked here. The red line is the replacement. So by early 1990s, China's fertility dropped below replacement. Now it's about 2 decades. Now we have to talk about the policy issue. It's always become a focus whenever you talk about China's population. China has we call it a couple-specific fertility policy. Each couple sign a different number of children they should allowed to have according to the government policy. It can be 1 child per couple, which is mandated for urban population, and 1.5 children policy, which is mandated for rural population. If a couple's first child is a girl, they will go for the second, but if the first is a boy, they have to stop. And the 2 children policy, which is mainly for a minority population and also some population in some special occupations, and 3 children, which is mainly for the border population, particularly in Tibet, Xinjiang areas. But this does not tell us the whole story. What about since each couple signed a different policy, now we have a question. How about if every couple in a given area 100% follow the government policy? What will be the fertility of this area, aggregately speaking? We call it policy fertility. What is the fertility targeted by the policy? We call it as a policy fertility. So we have to quantify the policy in terms of the fertility level. We do that for each policy, that the proportion of the population assigned to that to the policy. We can calculate that for each area. Then we map it together for the whole country. You can see that the lighter the color, the lower the fertility. So it really varies over area. This is calculated at the level of prefecture, which is between the province and the county, because county is too small to calculate. We can then sum them up to the provincial level. So for each province, what will be the fertility required by government, by the government policy? It varies by province too. And also we can group them in terms of the economic zone in China, the east, middle, west. You can see that the lower in the coastal area required by the policy, and then higher, and then in the west is the highest. But after all, what we can conclude from this study, we do see some diversity in terms of the fertility policy in China, which should not be simply said China's fertility policy is only a one-child policy. However, we cannot stop here. More than half of the population are subject to 1.5 children policy, which of course is mostly the rural population. But as you all know, no family can have half child, which means for this population under the policy of 1.5 children, half, basically, roughly, half will go 2 children, half will remain at 1 child. So after all, what's the proportion of Chinese family will finally end up with only 1 child? 2/3, which is a big proportion. So as a result, if we sum up further from the provincial level to the national level, we can have what the government policy targeted in terms of fertility is less than 1.5 children. So by that time, we thought this kind of policy should not sustain. It's time to consider to phase it out. So that we were working on that to have our petition to the government to have that policy issue on agenda. Finally, we have that completed and submitted. All these people individually signed as responsible for that petition. In the petition, we we urge government to revisit the issue, policy issue, and start to consider to get it phased out. It was later on reported in Science magazine as well. However, the 2004 petition was not favorably received. A lot of questions come up to the petition. Mainly the three questions. One is, I summarized them. One is how you see the population policy and fertility policy and fertility level. And a lot of people argue why the China fertility is so low because of there's a policy there. If you relax the policy, the fertility will go up, and the population will lose control. Another is policy and sex related at birth issue, and a lot of people argue even phase out the policy, the ratio will not become normal, and also how you review the policy and its relation with the family planning program as well. How we respond to these questions, we can respond that theoretically or mathematically. Finally, we decide we respond empirically. So we went to the field to look at some areas which has started two children per couple policy since the mid-1980s in various parts of the country. This is Yicheng in Shanxi province, and Chengde in Hebei province, and Ensi in Hubei province, and Jiuquan in Gansu province. All these areas started their two children per couple policy since the mid-1980s. Now it's already more than 20 years, which cover a population more than 8 million. It has been so big area, so big population, and for so long period, should be sufficient for us to see what we should see if that, as a lot of people's argument assume, there's a positive relationship between the policy and the fertility. But fertility policy is more relaxed, that fertility will be higher. Is that true? Then after we completed the field investigation, we had a seminar in Renmin University, and survey report were presented there. All these areas show population growth very slow, and although it allowed a couple to have 2 children, but all these areas, the fertility never been 2. No birth rebound, no increase of high parity births. Even the second parity births become less, and very, very few high parity births. Sexually related births are basically normal, and the program and client relation fine, and reoriented the program toward the quality of service. I show you some of these results here. This is from Yicheng County. The population grown very slowly, and the number of births very stable, about around 25 million, 2,500, around every year. And the more, if you look at the births by parity, the first parity in proportion become less, and not become more, from 50% to 70%. And the second parity become less, and the third parity and above become very, very few. And SRB more or less at a normal level. Of course, the number of births is small, so. And if you look at the accrued birth rate and natural growth rate, Yicheng is belong to the city of Linfeng. Linfeng is in Shanxi province. If you look at the birth rate, Yicheng is lower than Linfen, the city lower than the province and lower than the country. If you look at the growth rate, Yicheng is lower than the city, lower than the province, and lower than the country. And in terms of SRB, Jiuquan in Gansu province, basically it's normal, and in Ansi in Hebei province is basically normal. If you know the deteriorating the situation of SRB in China over the decades, this is quite a good situation. So finally, we have all these reports published as a book called An Experiment of 8 Million People. And on the other hand, we try to find a place we can experiment. What will happen if couple has the right to have 2 children? What will happen? But this kind of experiment is very difficult to find a place to do, because we are not in government. But fortunately, later on, we found a place in Jiangsu province. Jiangsu is a province very interesting because unlike other agriculture-dominated provinces, Jiangsu has a policy with 1 child per couple, even for rural population. So rural and urban population all required to have only 1 child per couple. Meanwhile, they have another policy, and if the one side of the couple is a single child, they can have 2 children. But when the single side, one side single can have 2 children, when the policy came out, there was almost no one eligible for that policy because no single children. But after 20 years, these single children grow up now to the marriageable age. In many areas, the single children account for 70%, 80%, even 90%. So that means more and more married couple naturally, according to the current policy, qualified to have 2 children. Now come to the next question. Once they have the right to have 2 children, will they want to have 2 children? Are they going to have 2 children? So we have a survey study conducted with the Jiangsu Population and Family Planning Commission on the childbearing desire and fertility behavior. This is that we were in the field to survey these rural women. Among these more than 18,000 women, we surveyed more than 4,000 qualified for 2 children. We asked the woman, do you know you can have 2 children according to the local policy? She said, yes, I know. But among these 4,000 plus women, only less than 10% have 2 children. Of course, they are still young. They can still have time to have the second one. Then we ask them, what do you think will be ideal? How many children? 45% said, yes, I think it's good to have 2 children. Then we ask the next question, because it's a concern of the local government, when they will have. If we want to have very soon or very late, when do you want to have your second child? Many women answer, I want to have 2 children, but I will not do it. Then we were confused, and only 21% said definitely I will have 2 children. Then 3 years later, in early 2009, we went to the field again to trace this woman who was interviewed 3 years ago, see what they did is consistent with what they said to us. We even don't want to come out the results because it's too few. Only less than 7% had their second child in the period of 3 years. Very, very few. Of course, they still have time to have their second child. But as you all know, the more delayed, the more unlikely to have the second child. Another example is in the very remote area. I don't know if anyone, this is Yichang, which is 3 gorgeous, area, and there's a mountain area in Changyang and Wufeng, very remote and a mountain area. I was there, to drive from the city to these counties requires more than 2 hours, no highway. But these are minority autonomous counties. So they petitioned to the Hubei Congress, People's Congress, to have 2 children per couple policy in early 2000. So everybody in that county can have 2 children. What happened? After 10 years, and nothing changed. The fertility did not go up. And birth rate is still very low, growth rate very low, sex rate of births are relatively normal. Why people don't want to have 2 children? Even I don't understand. We were so confused every time we went to the field. I just thought that to have 2 children is very rational. Why you want to have, even you have the right to have 2 children, you don't want. A lot of the reasons cited, as I quoted here, because of the basically the unfriendly environment, to the childbearing. And another issue is, as I mentioned a bit earlier, is the postpone in terms of time to marry. And of course, later you marry, and later to have a child, childbearing as well. And there's another survey in Beijing that reported these single children, aged 20 to 34. 34 is already very late now. If they want to have 2 children, only less than 36% said they want to have 2 children. And also for those women already age 35, still have no children. In 1990 was 4%, now it's 12%. Big increase. Of course, the fertility impact will be more visible over time, and one is the aging. We talk about the proportion increase, but I want to draw your attention. It's not only the proportion. You have to look at behind the proportion is the absolute size of the older people. 177 million, which is more than half of the U.S. population, aged 60 and above in China. That's a huge size. And by the mid of the 21st century, 1/3 of the China population will be aged 60 and above. More than 100 million will be aged 80 and above. Less than 2 labor supported one elderly. This one elderly is not me. It's not me. It's probably some young people here. These born in 1980s, 90s will be supported by less than 2 labor. So that time we will have a real crisis. And the aged population will increase, and proportion increase as well. But as we discussed a little bit, please.
So you said even if you relax the policy, the fertility will grow. And then you talk about if we don't relax the policy, we will have this aging problem. So I felt the implication is that even if you relax the policy, the fertility wouldn't grow, so the aging problem will still be.
That's right. That's right. We can discuss. Will not change the overall situation, but it will change a lot. If we have more, there are 2 things I can talk about that. One is population situation. Of course, if we can have more younger population in the next few years in terms of increase of birth, which will be good, mitigate the aging situation in the future. For example, because more serious the situation will be starting in in 2 decades from now, 2030 or later. So it requires the population in the requires time. If we have births now, 20 years, they will get to the labor force when the labor shortage will be more serious. But on the other hand, it's not only the population situation. We talk about it. It's the signal we have to turn our perspective from the traditional mindset to face the new challenges which will be coming. Aging is one of them. But this is another one. As we said in China, get older before get rich. This is about the social welfare and the pension system in China. If you look at the pyramid in China, see the blue ones, 2000, the transparent ones, by middle of this century, the big cohort will move upward to the retired age. To see more clearly what will happen in China, we can take Shanghai as an extreme case. Shanghai has been in negative growth for 20 years now. The biggest cohort in Shanghai in 2000 at the age of 40 to 44. Of course, now the 50 and 54. By the time of middle of this century, the pyramid will virtually upside down. That's what we see in the World of China exhibition 2000. I always like the picture because I think the architecture has a lot of demographic sense, to see what will be the population structure of Shanghai in the future. But the more will be the dilemma in rural area. Although people tend to think about the fertility is higher in rural area than in urban area, but as we discussed last night, there was no tradition of social security in China before revolution, after revolution. People rely on their children to support themselves when they get old. That's the survival strategy, the generation by generation. But now the situation is with the fertility reduction, children become less. Not only children become less, but also they move away. What we call the floating population in China. Basically the rural children float to urban area. So that's why the aging in rural area even more serious than in urban area. What kind of challenge we have to answer with aging? We don't know. We know some, but in fact, we have to admit we don't know what will happen because we never experienced an aging society in China's long history. This is a picture taken in Lula County. You see this is the elderly house, but the building is in pink because it used to be a school, but now no more students. So that become the elderly house, but they have no money to repaint it. And another issue related with gender. When life expectancy goes upward, the gap between male and female tend to be enlarged as usually in any population. So it will have a lot of elderly females. When I talk to students about that, female students tend to smile, happy, we will live longer. But I said, don't be happy too quick. That means we will have many widows. And who will take care of these elderly? And most of the elderly are taken care by daughters and daughter-in-laws. And one of the rationale of family planning or fertility reduction is called the opportunity cost, to reduce the number of children women to have, so that women can go out of the family, join the social activities. But now elderly support will pull women back home. So for those the women in their mid-ages in a dilemma for parent care or for career development. When parents tend to live longer, the care period will be longer. Finally, will be a situation young elderly to take care of the older elderly. And finally, the older parents are over, they are already by the retired age. So that comes another issue, how we see the population aging and the women's development, which is not much discussed yet. People tend to look at the issue separately. I have one of my students now working on that issue, hope to come out something. So finally will be not only we have the population aging, will be the aging of the older population, feminization of age, and high degree of lower aging. But aging is not just simply an issue of more older people, but the whole society will become old. So I would prefer to use the indicator of median age rather than proportion of the elderly. So the median age now is about 30, and by the middle of this will about 50, which means by that time half of the China population will be above age 50. So the whole population will be very old. definitely it requires overall reconstruction of the social functions and the social structure. So it's a lot of challenges. It's not the policy issue. Now, let me spend a bit of time to talk about the sex-related birth issue. SRB probably is one of the most simple indicators in demography. Requires very minimum calculation. You never see that occupy more than 1 page in any demography textbook, probably half page. No one ever thought it will get attention since the early 1990s, and so far generated numerous papers, both in China and internationally. But so far, people still very interested in that issue, but no consensus reached yet. So I want to talk some about the China situation. As you see, China's SRB getting worse and worse over the decades. And now, although it's not the unique that happened in China, but China became the country with the most serious abnormal SRB for a longest period in the world. If we look over the look at the SRB over time, in 1950s, 60s, 70s, more or less in a normal range in China, but went upward by the mid-1980s and remained very high. And in terms of SRB by parity, the higher the parity, the higher the SRB. Of course, for the higher parity, very few in number, so we can ignore that. But in terms of area, the dark the area, the more serious the situation. And from the 82 to 2000, 2005, and more areas become very serious in terms of SRB situation. Another issue is infant mortality in terms of sex ratio. In a normal situation, male infant mortality tend to be higher than female infant mortality, which means that the sex ratio of the infant mortality tend to be higher than 1. It's the red line. But over time, both the male and the female infant mortality come down, but the pattern is switched. Female mortality become higher than male mortality. So that the sex ratio becomes less than 1. These come to us show two patterns. One we call it before birth solution, which is by selection of selective abortion of the fetus. Another is the after birth solution, which is by neglect in infant care. So anyway, the infant is very vulnerable. So both reflect gender discrimination in childbearing, childbirth, and child survival. To me, that has a lot to do with the interplay of 4 factors. One is the cultural setting, or sex ratio, sex preference. Another is the level of socioeconomic development. Third one is the rapidity of fertility decline. And fourth one is the quantitative focus of the population program. I put that in chart. Usually we will see it's the situation when in a society, family size norm comes downward, but the sex preference remains quite strong and population policy only focus on the quantitative aspect of the situation, and sex detective technology become more and more available and accessible. All these factors will come on people's childbearing behavior. Then we will see almost simultaneously two demographic outcomes to occur. One is fertility will come down, but on the other hand, SRB will go up. A lot of people attribute that to the culture of some preference. Of course, this is relevant, but this is nothing new. Some preference has been with China for 1,000 years. A lot of people attribute that to lack of social security. That's true, but nothing new. It has been the situation for a long time. A lot of people attribute to access to sex detective technology. Yes, but not necessarily leads to abortion, sex-selective abortion. If you look at the curve again, you see the SRB over time, and also you look at the fertility trend again. And if you put these two together, you will see a very interesting pattern when fertility comes to approach to replacement. SRB tend to jump out of normal range to a abnormal level. Then later on, we found that also true in other populations, like recently in Vietnam, and also recent there's a paper in SRB, PDR, talk about Armenia, Kazakhstan. They showed similar patterns as well. So all these discussions come to us. It has a lot to do with the fertility decline. It's rational to get fertility down from high level in a population. But if fertility declines too rapidly and it declines to a too low level, it will come out something we may not anticipate. So it's my perception the rapidity of fertility decline intensifies the conflict between the number of children people desire and the sex of children people prefer. So the strategy of fertility, I call it quality for quantity, which is prefer boys. Another impact of fertility reduction is labor force. You have a small birth cohort. Of course, you will produce later on a smaller labor force in 20 years. Because of the fertility decline so sharp, and the labor force later on will decline as well. So from the late 2020s, the China's labor force will reduce, and about 100 million in 1 decade, about 10 million per year. I put this in a chart for you to easier to see. On the one hand, we see the overall total labor force will still going upward for a while, but the young labor, newly added labor, each year, in age 20 to 24, will come down from now on. In fact, this we predicted, but in fact, recently the Statistical Bureau announced there was a reduction, 3.5 million last year. It already start to see that, the reduction on new added labor. This most innovative, received the most recent education, young, vigorous labor will reduce sharply over time. And later on, the overall size of the labor force will reduce as well. It of course will somehow affect China's economic development in the future. So I think by that time we have generated more empirical evidence. We thought that we should submit another petition to the government. That was 2009 with all these new from the field work and from our studies. We have some more people signed for that petition to the government in 2009. Okay, so as you know, so far still the policy is there. But why are we focused on policy so much? Yeah, as the lady that posted the question, what we want to say, because China is facing a lot of totally new demographic challenges ahead. Basically, the four challenges that I can see. One is fertility will continue to be low. Nothing can convince us fertility will not continue go downward. A lot of the mathematical models and projections, but my observation is very simple. Look at the young people around you. Whatever the projection, you have to rely on people to give birth. Nothing you can rely on that. For the long history of China society, we had experienced a low growth period, which means the more births but the more deaths. For that various reasons, the famine, war, disease, disaster. But we never experienced a low fertility period. What a low fertility society look like, we don't know. We don't know. And also, as we discussed, we were we never had an aging society in China, 1,000 years history. The majority of the Chinese population never been covered by Social Security program, even after revolution. As we said, we don't know the heavily aging society look like. Third one is urbanization. China traditionally is a peasant society. But now China will become very urbanized. Even after the revolution, China still ruler dominated. Even after the 1979 reforms, still ruler dominated. Now, really, the ruler dominated society will disappear in China history for the first time. What the urbanized society look like, we don't know. We never experienced. Fourth one is the population movement. The census reported more than 200 million Chinese now on move. Now the China's, we call the floating population, becomes the largest movement in the world in peace period. We don't know what will happen. If we did not see what happened 20 years ago in terms of population movement in China, we have a very difficult time to predict in 20 years what will be China's population movement in terms of migration, or even in terms of internal migration and international migration. So basically we can summarize to say China will face a society as a low fertility society, a heavily aging society, highly urbanized society, and a broader mobile society. Now the Chinese government talked a lot about to build a called the Baochang society. I never know how to properly translate the Baochang. You can help me. Comfortable? A lot of discussion in China become the government's top priority to build a Baochang society. Enormous discussion in China. But within these discussions, very rarely we can see people talk about the dramatic demographic change ahead of us. That's why we want to have the policy to remove, because this will be a demarcation point. We have to depart from there, turn to respond to the new challenges. It's not just to some more babies. Why people so slow in terms of awareness of the respondent of the low fertility? Gavin Jones is a demographer now residing in Singapore. He has an observation. He has 3 reasons. One is the momentum. Populations continue growing. So people tend to see still getting bigger. But in fact, this is a momentum. Another is a mindset. For decades, people tend to build a mindset very untied childbearing. Why you want to have a baby? Why you want to have a baby? Childbearing becomes something very bad, very negative when people see childbearing around. Another third one to do with demographers. Demographers are so proud about the demographic transition theory. As you probably know that too, from high fertility to low fertility. But the theory did not tell us what after low fertility, what will happen. A couple of years ago, there was a meeting at the UN Population Division to discuss about the assumption of their population perspective. They have used for a long time to assume a population will remain fertility more or less at the replacement once it reached. But in fact, it's not true. More and more populations, when they get to replacement, continue to go down from 2.1 to 1.8 to 1.5, 1.3. So I was at the meeting. We had a lot of discussion about that. So a lot of new challenges, new issues to study. As I said to my students, what we have studied is over, outdated. You have new things to study. All these need to be restudied. So I think that, but for the first, we have to acknowledge we have get to the below replacement fertility. And the phase out the policy will be a very strong and a definite signal of that. And recognize focus on fertility decline and population control is no longer defendable. We have to understand the new population dynamics with low fertility, which is so different from we have seen before. And another issue is about the reproductive health and family planning program. It was initiated for the purpose of fertility reduction and slow down population growth. Now probably we need to identify new missions for the program. And after I discussed so much, you probably have more questions than I have answered. Then we are going to have a paper. I think it's going out next week in PDR supplement in honor of the retirement of Paul Demain as a long-time editor-in-chief in Population and Development Review. We have a paper in that issue. Basically, in the paper, we discussed two questions. Why China choose to adopt the so extreme method of birth control? Birth control is not unique to China, but the so extreme known as one-child policy. Second, why such a policy? We have seen so many negative consequences, but it's still there, remain so long. We have a lot of discussions in that paper that I will refer you if you have interest to look at. That's all I talk about today. Thank you. I would like to entertain some questions, but I will not promise to be able to answer all that.
What is the Shell-Common Society? What is that? Is that a policy movement or is that a social?
Government, particularly the recent Party Congress regard this as a top priority for China in the next 2 decades to build a Shell-Common society. Yeah, please.
Thank you for a fascinating talk and a tremendously important topic. You presented a compelling argument for this exchanging a one-child policy for a two-child policy. I'm wondering whether that's a strategic calculation to focus on a two-child policy instead of just lifting any policy whatsoever. Because as you clearly point out, even a two-child policy isn't going to get the fertility rate back above placement level. So one alternative would be to not only advocate for lifting the restrictions altogether, but argue for some pro-natal policy and hope that government officials would at least lift the ban. The other, which I heard you articulate, is to simply make the case that going from 1 to 2 is a good thing. So I'm not sure.
I think you have read my mind. But our strategy is to reduce the resistance as much as possible so we can move it ahead. For me, the policy that change has been delayed for more than 1 decade. We hate to see that further delayed. But yeah, once it initiate probably a lot more changes as you talk about it. But I would prefer that what you said will happen as quick as possible. Yeah. But still, even changing from 1 child to 2 children, so difficult.
Question, you talked about 2 different petitions, one in 2004, one in 2009. So when you send a petition to the government, is there ever any answer? Or, how does that work?
No. But I can tell you, we have petitions, but there are a lot of petitions. Not all these petitions are in the same direction. Meaning even more powerful petitions in opposite directions as well. You want to name it? But mostly from the, very interesting, mostly from the economic planning agencies. So they regard the population as a denominator when they calculate the GDP. That's their priority concern. If you cannot make the numerator bigger, why don't you make the denominator smaller? So a lot of the very strong resistance from these agencies, and also from some prominent figures too.
Thank you very much. It was a wonderful talk, and I learned a lot and have a lot of questions. So I think I was struck most by what looks to be a delay in marriage and a delay in fertility, and also a reluctance to have more children even when the opportunity is presented. And it's a little bit reminiscent of some of the work with American populations who say, I'd love to get married, but I personally am not going to get married because I'm not ready. I don't have the house. I don't have the job. It's interesting. If you ask them, ideally, should you be married? Yes. Would you like to be married? Yes. But are you going to be? No, no, no. And marriage is kind of this, if I got everything in place, one day maybe I could get married. And is that what's going on with, maybe if I got lucky and my job was more secure and if we made more money, we could one day afford to have a second child? Is that what's going on? Or is it more just, you said also there are these very strong cultural norms where people would look at you funny if you had more than one child. So
Yeah,
how much is culture and how much is
a lot of the, tell you the truth, at the beginning, we just thought that the policy should not continue, should be replaced. So it's a very simply the policy issue we're working on. But later become more and more issues come to us. For example, you talk about how you see the relation between the people's desire and their actual behavior, the discrepancy between the two. We continue work on that. A lot of interesting things we never thought about that.
Oh, Professor Gu, can I add something,
Sure,
a
please.
note
Yeah.
to your answer? Is that I incidentally had a long period ethnography, in Northeast China. I think for Chinese peasants, if they have a second chance to have a child, they will think about it similar with as you just said. So I have a question for my former mentor, Professor Gu. Is that, from your talk, I sense that since the late 1990s, the actual fertility rate in general in China has become lower than the maximum fertility rate allowed by the all kinds of regional population policy. So even if the population control policy phase out, that won't change the overall fertility rate in general.
Sure.
But can you say something more specific about, if the Chinese state cancel this policy, what kind of positive impacts might have on females' reproductive experience? And also, is there any can you predict, any other possible portion or regional fertility changes without this population policy? I'm meaning that, especially in urban area, because for the past 33 years, it's a one-child policy, right? So if the policy canceled in urban areas, I predict there might be fertility change. So that's.
I was going to add to that question. I think that's interesting because if the barrier is financial and rural life is very difficult, rural families, given the opportunity to have 2 children, may say, "I'm not going to do it." But urban families may leap at the chance. So I guess we don't know.
We don't know.
In urban
Yeah.
areas what the effect of lifting the policy is, because the urban families might be much more responsive.
More I go to the field, as I said, more I'm confused. Really the Chinese society changes very so quickly. Very often I feel I cannot catch up. I talk to the local people, how many children you want and why don't you want the 2 children. For example, I give you, in the mountain area, I talked to one family. I said, why you want only 1 child? Since they are very poor. He said, I just want 1. I want to make sure she will go to university. She will get a job in city, and she will get a house in city. Then we move to city to live with her. Oh, that's their life strategy behind. They have a lot thinking about it. It's not just childbearing. It's the overall life strategy. A lot of the we have to learn a lot. So that's why, as I said at the beginning, we saw that just a policy issue, but now we see that it's the society changes so much, and ahead of us there are so many new challenges. So we urge the government to get rid of the 1-child policy. We get ready to respond to these new challenges. That's very important. If we still stick with the 1-child policy, the whole mindset still with the population control. So that will be much delayed in our response. That's our concern. Another, as I may add, is why I would be happy to talk here with you all. I was surprised to see, when there are a number of U.S. media reported China's 1-child policy issues from Beijing. These reports do not receive a very positive reactions from U.S. audience. As I can see from the website, why China want to get rid of a 1-child policy, why you want to have more children, why you want the China population to become bigger, and how can the world survive or sustain, all these. So to discuss with you, I want the American colleagues and friends also know what we pursue. It's not that we want to have go back to high fertility. It's not our intention to get the China population bigger and bigger. But it's on the other dimension is the human rights issue. Couples should have the right to decide how many children they want to have. And particularly for those young couples, they grow up in a reform era. They don't want to just listen to anyone, even their parents, to decide how many children they want. Nor you talk about the government to say to them. So I think it's time to get rid of that. And finally, we'll get to your point, too.
I come from Hainan.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, I think the government 1-child policy just bad for the people who are paid for the government, by the government. For example, if you are a teacher, you're paid by the government. If you are a government worker, you're paid by the government. You can have 2 children, because if you have 2 children, you will lose your job. But if you work for yourself, you're self-employed, or you're just a farmer, in China, Hainan, you can have many children. Actually, you have no problem. Sometimes when the government, maybe they'll fine you about 2,000 or 3,000, but they still have children. Yes, many people around me, if they have not a government paid job, they have many children. So it's different from culture to culture.
That's right.
Because many people, they have to work by fishing. They have to go out for fishing. They must have boys. If they don't have boys, they can't make their living. So many people, if they have 5 girls, they still have babies. They must have a boy.
You're right. Yeah, so the policy may also come a lot of corruption issues, and
And I think the government paid workers, like me and my husband, we have better financial status and stable, but we just can have one baby. But some family, they have much worse financial status, but they can have more children. So I think it's a bad policy because such adult, well educated and better financial status, but we can have more children. But some people they can't afford the children better education, but they have many children. So I think it's a very bad policy.
yeah, a lot of aspects that we can discuss about that.
Professor Gu, whoops.
Yes.
Professor Gu, before your mentee leaves,
Mhm.
I thought it might be a good idea to introduce him because he is now at Columbia. So Professor Gu's mentee from several decades ago is a scholar now at the Weatherhead Institute, and he's an anthropologist who I understand won an award from a very prestigious organization that reviews dissertations and looked at 10,000 of them. And of course, he, was able to receive the award. So we're very pleased to have Dr. Chen with us. He is headed out to teach a course, but I said to him, just wait until I introduce you.
Thank you
So
much.
he is one of the individuals that Professor Gu has mentored over several decades, and we're delighted to have two for the price of one, maybe.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Guya. I still remember how many years ago? 25 years ago, I was only 18 as a sophomore at Beijing University. You was the most excellent professor I ever encountered in my undergraduate years at Beijing University. It was you introduced me to the field of demography and helped me set up my fieldwork setting back in 2002. And I entered the field at the inter-ethnic area, Manchu Han Chinese area, at the mountainous, very cold, extremely cold, in Jilin and Liaoning, at the borderland between Jilin and Liaoning. And my dissertation is about the history of population control policy in rural China over the past 40 years. And I specifically focusing on females' experience of this policy. And I use, because population control policy is very much an integral part of China's modernization ambition. So I use females' stories to write a historiography of the meaning of the local history of China's modernization, as well as its meaning to its most ordinary citizens. So the award I got was the Distinguished Dissertation Award in Social Sciences from the Council of Graduate Schools. So it's about, there was almost 500 leading universities in North America, mostly about all the IVs, including Columbia. So it's quite a surprise. So thank you very much. So I have to leave. I have to go to teach my seminar. So I have to
please,
run. Thank you.
please.